So, yeah, to make matters worse, there's now clips going around online of Jeremy Swayman talking about how he expected the Leafs to draft him. Like, cool, thanks for that. It's the thing I needed today. Man who calls the games. Top dog analyst for Sportsnet and Hockey Night in Canada, two-time Stanley Cup champion, Craig Simpson. What's up, man?
Not a whole lot. Actually, my two sons sent me that draft. I think the Leafs picked right before Swayman was taken.
The pick before. The pick before. Who was the goal? They also happened to pick a goaltender. I just don't know who it was. Did you see it?
I'd have to look back. Yeah. I think Ian Scott. Does that sound familiar?
Poor Ian Scott. The kid just couldn't stay healthy, but he was having a moment. I believed in Ian Scott. Had the size, had the skill, had a good mental makeup, but just the body kept failing him. But yeah, that's tough. That's yeah, I feel worse. So thanks to your sons for sending you that. Thank you for the information, Simpson boys.
Well, you know how fans are, right? You deal with it every day. They're looking and saying they look for angles like that as well.
Yeah, so I imagine that they're giving you a pretty good reflection of some frustrations they might be feeling.
Well, I think, listen, the magic of playoff hockey is just how things can turn, your emotions change from game to game, shift to shift, day to day. So, I mean, that really is part of the challenge of forget about being a fan. Let's talk about being a player.
Yes.
You know, you go through the highs and lows of playoff hockey. And, you know, I just stayed up late afterwards last night watching the Oiler game and same kind of thing. You know, the Kings had the lead 4 times and gave it back. And then at the end of the day, on home ice, you know, Edmonton ends up losing in overtime. So these are the things you got to pick yourself up off the mat each and every night. And it's no different for this Leafs team. You know, you came out of game 2 after a disappointing game 1, and you win a huge game in the Boston Garden, which is not an easy place to get points out of. And you come back in a game last night, and listen, those quick goals, you know, 28 seconds after you tie the game, those are the ones that can win you a series and lose you a series. And I think it's as old as playoff hockey is. Those kind of momentum swings become a huge narrative. And I guess the challenge now is, you know, what do you learn from that moment, and what do you take out of understanding that you got to find a way to dig yourself out of that? Because I thought, you know, the game was an imperfect game, and quite frankly, for a while, it was quite a boring game. Did you not think? For a good stretch, not a whole lot happening.
I sure did.
But to get that game to tie, you just can't allow that kind of, you know, quick response goal. And of all guys, it's, you know, arch nemesis number 1 in Marchand getting the big goal.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. That was part of what added to the frustration, honestly, is that the game was really boring, and then Toronto tied it, and I went, okay, you know, you
can live with
the
that.
moment. Yeah, seize the moment, you know, and then immediately it's over. And it's funny, I had a friend at the game who sent me a video of her, a little girl with her dad celebrating the goal and, you know, ripping her towel around, screaming, and then boom, the puck's in the net the other way, and just her going like a very guttural, no. And I went, yeah, welcome.
Happened?
Yeah, I'm like, welcome, child. This is your future. This is your destiny. But you're right. The fan perspective is far less interesting than the former player's perspective. That's why you're on here. Okay, so here's the thing that is frustrating me probably more than anything, because you referenced that Edmonton game. I also stayed up and watched it. And yeah, Edmonton sucks. You lose it. There's no moral victory for you. Kopitar rips a beauty. It's overtime. At least we got to kind of go to bed early enough. I do love when overtime finishes quickly, especially when I got to do this show early in the morning. But Edmonton, trailing in that hockey game, they get some power plays, right? And what happens? They look dangerous because they, much like the Leafs, are predicated on a bunch of players at the top of their roster who have a ton of skill. And McDavid is flying around, and they're making beautiful passes. And in fact, on one of their power plays, maybe the save on Bobrovsky.
Save of the night, for sure. Yeah,
exactly, right? Like there's a play where you're like, oh my God, I didn't know you were capable of making such a save. It's incredible. No rebound either, just, you know, killed it off of Leon Draisaitl. But the Oilers' power play is dangerous. They snap the puck around. They've got multiple guys who can shoot it. Toronto, when they lost to Florida, they were 2 of 13 on the power play. In 2022, when they got eliminated, they were 14% on the power play. 21, they were 13% on the power play. And in 20, they were 15% on the power play. That's as far as I'm willing to go back, because then it's Columbus, which wasn't really playoffs, and it's like a weird season, all the games at home, no fans, blah, blah, blah. What do you see with this power play unit? Because this isn't just a now problem. This has been a problem year over year with this group.
Well, and it's been a problem since the turn of the calendar from February to March. I mean, this was a power play that was second in the league at that point, and was really, they went 14 for 28 in February. And I mentioned it last night, and your example of the Oilers power play, you don't sit at a chalkboard or a whiteboard, I guess, nowadays, and put all these moves together and the system that you're going to play when McDavid's got the puck, when Draisaitl's got the puck. They're free-flowing, they're moving. That save you mentioned from Talbot on Draisaitl was an incredible individual effort by McDavid, right? Mm-hmm. You get the penalty killing moving, you get them looking over the shoulders, you get the puck moving from low to high to side, bodies moving around. That was the Leafs power play earlier in the year. And I know Sheldon even alluded to it. It's just gone stale. The players haven't had that same freedom and flow, where some of it is instinctual. Some of it is the read off the penalty kills. You go into your power play knowing the type of penalty killing you're expecting to see. And so you try to manipulate the puck and the body movement to open up the lanes that you need to make that kind of pass down where Draisaitl scored the game before, right, from a tough angle there, but got robbed last night. So if you watch the Leafs power play, it's just been far too predictable and stagnant, and nothing about it is natural right now. And I think every power play in the league, goes through little stretches where you're going to have that stale part. And that's why sometimes the coach is forced to change up personnel and move bodies around a little bit. But this has been, far too long in terms of that kind of timing. I mean, they went through a 2 for 27 stretch in 10 games. Right now, they've gone just 4 for 23 in the last 6. But this is when it matters most, right? 1 for 11 in a series that you've got to find a way to get something going. So whether it's, Nylander obviously is a big part of that movement and that free flow when the power play is going well. So that's been a miss. But they haven't really been able to generate the big shot by either, Matthews from his spot or even in that bumper spot into the slot for Tavares. And quite frankly, you said it, the special teams has been the difference in the series so far. You got, a 5 for 10, 50% power play for the Bruins and a 9.1 for Toronto. It doesn't take too brilliant a mathematician to know that that's not, those aren't good numbers in your favor.
Yeah, they're horrible numbers. They're horrible. Yeah. It's a nightmare when you stare at them. And to me, it's just, you mentioned the Leafs power play is stagnant. Edmonton's is explosive. You just look at it and it's just, man, this pops. There's an energy to it. And with the Leafs, it's not. And again, this is a layman's interpretation of things at times. But to me, one of the things when you talk about the predictability is that you have a couple of guys on the Leafs power play who can't shoot the puck. And one of the things that I've actually liked is Bertuzzi on the power play, because he has a defined role that works, which is him creating traffic and being busy in front of the net. And my fear is that if Nylander comes back, which most people are predicting him to on Saturday night, that he draws in that power play for Bertuzzi. And all of a sudden, you've still got the core problem, which is the reason why they've had it go back and had these cold stretches, which is that predictability and that stagnant feel. And I'm curious if you think that the most important thing for them is that personnel change at that point, beyond just injecting Nylander and removing Bertuzzi and going back to the same old thing, that it actually has to be a real split, a true split.
Well, I do think, though, that creativity is what you need a little bit more, and a little bit more confidence. I mean, unfortunately, I agree with you to an extent. Bertuzzi has some abilities in there, but quite frankly, the best chances on the power play last night went to Bertuzzi. And I would say that's probably not the guy. Like one good shooting opportunity in the second period, 3 point-blank chances in front of the net in either, was it the first or the third? I can't remember which one. But I go, Bertuzzi's not your natural scorer on that power play, right? And you would have hoped that even if it was on the stick of Tavares, listen, John had 18 goals last year and had a good ending of the season this year on the power play. You get him in that slot area, he's probably going to score. Bertuzzi had 4 chances and did it back into the pads of Swayman 3 or 4 times. So not a knock. It's just that's the reality. You'd rather have it on Matthew's stick, Nylander's stick, or Tavares' stick in that tight area. So I don't think there's any question that a Nylander back on the power play might give a little energy. But it is a mindset that you look at those key times. I mean, there's not often you sort of say, even as an analyst in the game, this is a must score. Yeah. But you mentioned that Edmonton power play. You kind of get a feeling if they get a lucky power play or a gift at a critical time, you're going, they're going to score. And if they don't score, it's what happened last night is Talbot makes the biggest save of the evening. But I've lost a little bit of that feeling with the urgency of this Leaf power play. And that's something that, it's the genie in the bottle, right? Like what happens to a group of 5 guys that have been snapping it around and scoring? Last year, they were the second best power play in the league. For a good chunk of this year, they were a top 3. They ended up even 7th isn't even all that bad, but it doesn't look like that now. And that's what playoff hockey brings to you. The challenge of competing and execution at the most critical times is what gets you to become a Stanley Cup champion. And, there's the challenge of can you do it when you need it most? And the answer, at least to this stretch, is that, it's failed them a bit, and they're penalty killing the same note that they haven't been able to get the big stop when they needed it the most.
Do you think that the penalty kill can, they can improve from a numerical standpoint because it has to? It's next near impossible to be worse. But is there anything that you're seeing right now where you're hopeful, hey, this could actually improve a little better, or there's a detail that you're seeing right now that you think the Leafs need to shore up on?
Well, I think there's sticks. When the Leafs are struggling defensively, they have bad sticks. And I showed at different times during this year when the penalty killing struggled, the D are closing on guys, but your stick is a lazy stick. So a guy passes through your legs. I mean, the one thing you can't let happen, and go back to even game 2, is that Marchand passed through the crease, through the legs of Liljegren to Geekie. Now, Geekie missed his shot and got lucky that it went in. But you can't allow those passes. I mean, that's penalty killing 101. You get in the shooting lanes, but more importantly, a good stick doesn't allow anything cross crease. And especially when you've got the likes of a Marchand at one side who can one-time it and quick release, and a Pasternak on the other side, and Jake DeBrusk in the middle getting tap-ins that you've seen. Look at the types of goals. It's Marchand, a saucer pass over Liljegren, and DeBrusk goal in game 1, the Geekie through the legs. I mean, those are penalty-killing sins, and you just can't allow it to happen. And, I made a point. I was quite frankly shocked that TJ Brody didn't start in the back end. And we haven't used it in the broadcast yet, but when you look at, the season stats, Brody, ice time on the ice, second to Morgan Riley, shorthanded time on the ice, first of the Toronto Maple Leafs, blocks, second, plus minus, fourth, all the little things. And you go, that there's where, at some point you go, your penalty killing has been terrible and 50%, and it's really cost you 2 games. What do you do to change? Well, maybe you put back in the guy who had the most penalty killing time that you had all season long.
Who are you putting him in for, though, is the question.
Well, honestly, you can, the usual suspects are the guys who started, whether it's Benoit, who I like Benoit and McCabe, but they also make mistakes. It's interesting how everybody views the game, because you all have your favorites or you pick on somebody. I think Brody's been picked on all year because okay, you've got other guys who fit a different mold. Lyubushkin's had his troubles. Liljegren's had his troubles. I think at some point it's the hardest job as a coach, and I've said this to Chris so many times. A lot of times it's dealing with your forwards, but you get into your whiteboard and you got the magnets of your lines and your D pairs, and you start to fiddle with one because you know you're having trouble, and you go, oh, I like that pair. And then you look at your other two and you go, well, but I don't like that. We can't play them there. Same with the forward lines. And that's the hardest choice of being a coach and making the difficult choices is, one pairing kind of unbalances the others at different times, but those are the tough decisions that you have to make at different times. I just look and say, you're 3 games into a Stanley Cup playoff series and your penalty killing is 50% and you've given up 5, you got to do something to try to rectify that. And, I think maybe, I know you want to be a more physical team and all that, but physicality hasn't been the problem in this series. And I just think that I personally would have Brody back in the lineup, whether it's for Liljegren or for Lyubushkin or for Benoit.
Yeah. My original thought this morning was Benoit, just so that Brody can play his natural side, because I think one of the things that's been difficult for him is, and as he's aged,
going back and forth.
Yeah, and I just think he's looked tougher on the right side. But if you're asking me who I think has given you the least and who, like, the biggest upgrade from a penalty kill standpoint, I would say Liljegren. Like, he comes out, and then you're not losing some of that physicality that has been working for you. So I think if it was me, I'm with you at this point. You probably want to inject him back in the lineup, but yeah, I think you got to ask him to play that right side again and just hope it. So much of this is like who we criticize and what happens is about expectations, right? Like, nobody has any expectations of Pontus Holmberg, so we're not going to be breaking him down for 15 minutes after a game. We are going to be doing that for Mitch Marner, though, who had a nice assist in that game. But the rest of it, what are you seeing right now with Mitch's game? Because it doesn't look like he's able to make as many plays as we've seen from him in the past where he creates time and space.
Right. So I actually watched even while the game was going on, I watched him in the last half of the game from a different lens even. And I said, forget about the plays. Because early on, I agreed with even the panel's assessment and that, the confidence. And I've lived it as a player where there's times in your career where you can't do wrong. I just got so much confidence with the puck. I want it all the time. You're making plays. And I don't care who you are. There's times where you go, oh, I hope the puck doesn't come to me because I got nothing right now. I got no confidence. And I think that everything that goes into Mitch's game comes from his great skating ability. And so I watched it with a different lens of saying, I want to just forget about what he does with the puck. I want to see what his feet are doing. And there's no question that, my worst playoff performance was my second year in Edmonton, 89. And I had a high ankle sprain at the end of December and played through it for a while, had to get back out of the lineup, had a cast on my ankle. Now I came back with I only missed about 15, 17 games, I think. But I was not saying I'm not a good skater, and I could hardly skate, and I couldn't play the way I normally did. I couldn't dig in and get there. So I watched him last night from that perspective, and there is no question. Those little quick stops and starts and turns and get yourself out of trouble just were not there, and the zip in his legs weren't there. And I think that's what starts to wear on your confidence, because little plays that he's used to putting the puck to an area and zipping by a guy, if you watched last night, it was broken up probably 70% of the time maybe. And the one good play he showed some patience, but he didn't even really have the speed that he normally has to make that play on the goal too. He had to outweight and overreach the stick. And so, that's the reality of being a star player in the NHL, though, at playoff time. Nobody cares about what's going on in your body. It's all about production. And so there's no question you're going to be under the microscope in the eye. But to me, that kind of coincides with, the ineffective ability to make the plays you're used to seeing them play. And I can't help but think that it wears at your confidence a little bit when you do get the puck and all of a sudden you've lost it 4 out of 5 times instead of making a great play 4 out of 5 times.
Yeah, no, I think that's being reflected in his play. And, you're also seeing it from the way that defenses are treating him, right? How often have we seen Mitch Marner, when he's got the puck on his stick in the offensive zone, defenses backing off, going like, you can't try to just close the gap with him now. And in this game, and yesterday, I thought specifically, like the Bruins aren't afraid to just go at him, right? Even when they're on the power play. It's just like, here they go. There's like, they're going to Mitch, and then all of a sudden it feels like he's making either a rush play or an indecisive play, or once they get the body on him, he's not able to obviously out-physical whoever it is. And it looks like he is laboring. Truly.
Well, look at the darting. Like both he and Nylander at their best, and that's where I think Nylander has really made strides in the last 2 years plus. Where when they're dealing, like you make that little lunge that you're talking about, and it's a quick little spin turn with speed, and all of a sudden the guy's off your shoulder and gone to the net. And I think they're realizing is right. The confidence of the power play collectively isn't all that high. So whenever that is, when you're running a penalty kill, you're going, let's be aggressive, all four guys, work in unison, because you got to force this power play that's kind of not in sync to all of a sudden make great plays under pressure. And so if I'm looking at Mitch Marner and I'm going, you know what, guys, he doesn't have the movability he usually does. Let's make him be under duress all the time. And sooner or later, that starts to eat away even more at his, confidence to be able to make those plays.
So the Nylander thing, not without speculating about the injury, there's this whole thing about, well, the Leafs are trying to play it coy and be secretive about it because you don't want Boston to adjust. You want to make them think that they've got a guy in the lineup potentially, and their coaching staff is focusing on a couple of different game plans. But the flip side to me isn't spoken about enough, which is, okay, so sure, there are some adjustments that need to be made for the Bruins, but for the Leafs, it's like there's also the same thing. Like if you're a player, like somebody's coming out if Nylander's coming in. Like your lines change. There's ice time changes. There's changes on the bench. And yes, these are things that they should be accustomed to from the standpoint of like they had Nylander all year and have always had him. But is it tough as a player when you're unsure about a major figure stepping in and out of the lineup? Like how does that impact your own team when it's mercurial like this?
Yeah, well, I think the unknown for us even doing the games is like, the last thing you don't want to speculate and have rumors rampant, which always happens in our world there, which is not good for the guy. It's not good for the organization. It puts other players when they can't talk about their teammate. So I don't like it from that perspective at all. And, even being as close to it as we are, you're going, I can't really say anything because you don't know and you're wrong. And the last thing you want to do is be a speculative person at a really important time. So I don't think there's any question that the secretiveness adds to the intrigue for the wrong reason. So, but injuries are a part of it. And I know that, when a great player, one of your top players comes back into the lineup, somebody has to fall. A lot of times it's been, say, Robertson, who, is a good young kid and a good player. But when you're getting into playoff hockey, every player understands that. That's part of the hierarchy of the game, and that's part of where you try to aspire to get to. I just think overall you got to go, hey, we're a better team when William Nylander is dealing, when he's going. And what the heck's going on? I can't talk about it. You got to be careful about what you say. I think some of the younger guys early on were, wow, it's too bad about Nylander, but everyone's going, well, what's wrong, right? So I do think it creates more issues than it probably needs to, but I do understand the secretiveness. But there's no question that you go through this series and each game adds on without 88 in your lineup, it becomes a little bit more difficult to come back and to be a part of this series.
So he was asked a question directly about the officiating and about Marchand, but Keefe gave a pretty, I thought, emotional answer about him getting into the feet of Bertuzzi and how it's an art, and sort of started like to stammer on a little bit about that element of the game. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts about your head coach speaking on, the other team's agitator and kind of almost giving him shine in a way after a game like that? Like, does that mean anything to you? Is that a throwaway to you? Is that a look into the psyche?
The takeaway for me, I said about that whole play, twice there should have been a whistle. So if nothing else, you're just going, I don't care if we even got a penalty or if Bertuzzi doesn't dive there and jump there, you probably get a wrestling match between the two that the ref let happen 2-3 times up the ice. The third time where the ref put the whistle away was just outside the blue line when Marchand did get his sticks into his feet, but Bertuzzi took a 2-foot hop, right? Like that's what's the tough part of the balance between the officials. But when you watch all of that and then later on see Tavares, holding call at the end of the game, or to me the Charlie McAvoy on Matthews, I go, okay, if that's not a penalty, then nothing's a penalty. So that's the whole sequence of that goal, and inevitably. That is a team kind of like Boston. If you look at the comparables between these two teams, how they've played and the success Boston's had against Toronto, that is a classic, whether it's Bergeron or Marchand or Pasternak, they get those calls, but they make you pay. And you know what? And that's the sign of, a veteran good team that's had that ability. But I thought that whole sequence should have been blown, and it should have been minimum 4-on-4 hockey. And instead it goes, and that chaos is what creates, that's a terrible goal by Frederick, and that's one for Samsonov that he lost his net a little bit, and you can't allow that goal. But it's not a secret that goal happens at the end of all that chaos, because you do lose a bit of your focus. Even as a goalie, you might be going, oh, that's a penalty, and then all of a sudden it's a turnover and it's back. That is where I would say some of the more veteran teams, we've seen it in Tampa doing it to the Leafs at different times, and Boston through all the matchups that they've had. They kind of thrive in that chaos, and look at the response goal that Marchand scored right after the game was tied. Again, a battle in the corner. They won it. It's on his stick and it's off, and that's what drives you crazy. But you got to tip your hat to the type of player that is that can make that happen.
Yeah, I guess to play off of what you're saying, it's obviously two different spots where the official needs to call the penalty. And in fact, like you say, those are two bad misses by the officials. But you're right. It's that the other teams, the veteran teams, are like, yes, we love it. Good. Chaos. Throw the chaos. We'll be fine. And the Leafs, just like with Sheldon, it's a reflection of who they are as a team, where they're really bothered by it, right? Like it sits with them. And that's the part I don't like is you go, okay, they missed the call on McAvoy. But you know what? They were giving you makeup calls in that game because they knew it too, all right? Like the Lowry one in the corner on Matthews. Where
it's right after.
Yeah, they're like, yep, here you go. And what did you do with it? You didn't score a power play goal. Samsonov, you let in a bad goal. Okay, sure. Guess what happens in the playoffs? Goalies let in bad goals. It's only the Leafs, the way that they talk about it, like the other goalie played well and our guy let in one softie. It's like you were never meant to – I thought the whole thing about this team was that they were supposed to score a bunch of goals. They had more secondary offense, and they've got all these stars up front. Like, score more than 2 goals. You keep hammering it home on the broadcast. These guys have gone, 9 of their last 10 games with 2 goals or less. I just brought up those power play stats. I'm just learning now, I guess, that the Leafs were supposed to be the 90s Devils that were going to win every hockey game with 2 goals and completely shut you down. Like, that was never the formula. So, to me, it's kind of get over it, adjust, make something happen, create your own luck, score on the power play, score 5-on-5, do something else. You
bet. I have to actually. I'm sorry to do this.
No, go, Craig. I've kept you for a long time.
I got to jump on a conference call right
go,
here.
Go. You don't have to say anything. I'll say thanks for the time, Craig. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, no problem.
Take care.
Take care, man. Craig Simpson, Hockey Night in Canada, NHL and Sportsnet, 2-time Stanley Cup champion.